Hi, I'm Vince Samios, and I'm converting a shipping container into a tiny house-style home office. In the previous video, we moved and leveled the container, and in this video, we'll be cutting out the openings for the windows and doors and welding in the steel window and door frames. So make sure you're subscribed, and let's get started. So essentially, this is the plan. I've done some drawings in CAD, and as you can see, we start with just a big blue container, and that's what we already have in the garden ready to go. Next, we need to cut some openings, and you can see in this drawing that those openings have been cut. Not much to see, it's very simple. It's just some straight cuts through the corrugated sides of the container. And then we need to look at installing the steel frames for the doors and windows. I've got in the drawing here the 50 by 100mm box section in its final positions where it will be welded. The final step is to secure the container permanently from the inside. And the way that I've done that is very, very simple. I'll just hide the body of the container here and we'll zoom in on the door. This is the inside of the double doors at the end of the container. And in 5 spots, I've drilled through both sides of the door, or both box sections of both sides of the door, installed some 12mm threaded bar, and then put a nut on either end. And that should secure the container extremely well and permanently from the inside. So you can see there that 12mm threaded bar goes all the way through, and that'll stop anyone they can attempt to try and pry through, but that will stop them being able to pry into that container, and that makes it really, really secure. The first step was to mark out where I was going to be cutting the openings for the windows and doors, and to do this I used a flexible piece of cork just to make sure I'd have a straight line through the corrugations on the side of the container. The tools I've used for cutting the container is just an angle grinder. It doesn't have to be a good quality angle grinder, but strongly recommend 1mm slitting or cutting discs. So these are just very thin abrasive discs, and they wear down quite quickly, so you need quite a few of those actually to get through the container. And then once you've done the cutting, you'll need to do a little bit of grinding of any sharp edges, so there are just some grinding discs that I've used for that as well. You will go through quite a few cutting discs, but a grinding disc will last a long time. So the costs involved with this part of the project included some new equipment, so some welding gear, and in total, including the helmet, that was probably about 150, 160 pounds. Then there was the consumable welding rods, that was about 30 or 40 pounds, and the wire discs, the cutting discs and the grinding discs, and that was probably a total of 30 or 40 pounds as well. But the main cost came in the cost of the steel for the window and door frames, and that was about 380 pounds or so. So if you do want to support this project, there is a link to my Patreon down in the description. So this is the steel tubing that I'm using. So you can see it's a 4mm wall thickness, and that is 50 by 100. Now I tried to get something a little bit smaller and a little bit thinner, but this was the cheapest that was going to do the job and be good enough. So it's actually turned out quite well, and it seems to be that this is what everyone is using. So the professionals are using the 4mm and the 100 by 50. And for me, I think it's fine. I don't see a problem with using this at all. For the welding, I bought something pretty basic. It's just quite a cheap arc welder that can also do TIG. You can adjust the amps from 20 amps all the way up to 200, but 200 was blowing fuses, so I don't see how you can possibly run this at 200 amps. In fact, even 160 was blowing fuses. So that's okay. I'm running this at approximately 80 amps when I'm running the 3.2mm 8018 rods. Now, buying a stick welder was a bit of a mistake. It took me quite a while to get the hang of it, and really I should have just bought a MIG welder, but eventually I did get some serviceable welds. If you are enjoying this video, make sure that you subscribe to follow along with the rest of the project. Also, it'd be fantastic if you could give the video a like, and if you have any questions or comments, just pop them down in the comments below. I am also on Instagram at Vincent Samios, so if you pop along there, you get to see a few behind the scenes, and also you'll see some pictures of the projects well ahead of time before they're posted on YouTube. So do pop along there and give us a follow. I've tried 3 different rods for this project. I've tried a 70-18 rod at a 1.6mm thickness, and the 1.6 was just too thin. It wasn't getting any material down at all. I've also tried a 60-13 at a 2.5mm, and I found that I was just blowing through metal really quickly. I was blowing through the sides of the container, and I wasn't really getting consistent welds, and I wasn't getting much material down. So the third stick that I've tried is the 80-18G. Now this is made by ESAB, and it's the ESAB OK 73.08. Now that's a 3.2mm, but it runs at only 80 amps for me anyway. That's what I've decided to use it at. And I find that I can get some pretty decent welds down. I can get a fair bit of material without blowing through that thinner steel too easily. So this is what I'm using. Now it's also apparently better for Corten steel, so weathering steel. And that was why I chose it initially, not realizing that it would actually be the preferred stick for me in the end. So if it were me, I'd go with the 80-18G. Now, all I've done here is I've cut the container, I've placed the pieces in position, and then I'm welding it all together. Now the welds are terrible, and I've never welded before, so don't judge me too harshly, but they are strong enough, they are going to do the job. This is how I secured the container door with the threaded bar. The final thing I need to do is just to give all the steelwork a coat of paint to avoid it rusting. So the process of cutting out the windows and welding in the frames was relatively simple, and it was basically just a few steps. I needed to mark where I was going to cut. I needed to cut where I needed to cut. I needed to weld in the steel frames that would eventually hold the windows and doors. I needed to then grind down any of the welding residue and any rough welds, and then just stick a coat of paint on there to stop any rusting. And it is really as simple as that. In the next video, I'll be framing out the container, so make sure you've subscribed and come along and see that one as well.